If the government gets involved, the government begins to set standards that, maybe a person who's perfectly capable of doing the job does not hit those standards. And that's my concern. We better just let to natural evolution as over time more and more employers become aware that particularly college degrees aren't worth much. And as one employer told me, a master's degree is almost a negative because it takes you too long to deprogram these people.
Well,
this moment captures the core conflict. Who defines competence in America, institutions, or real-world performance? It challenges credential authority, government involvement, and the legitimacy of educational power structures.
I'd like to recognize my good friend from Wisconsin, Mr. Grothman.
Thank you very much. Mr. DiTonato, are there technical changes that employers would need to make to upgrade their systems to accept skills-based records, you think?
There are certainly some technical changes or opportunities to upgrade. There's some different standards available like LER, LER-RS, but ultimately when we're talking about talent marketplaces as an opportunity, we also can bypass a lot of the HRIS or ATS systems because we've built in the opportunity to allow for employers, small businesses, medium-sized businesses, and large businesses to understand the talent that's available and to...
I think they probably can figure it out, I think in a lot of cases. I'm always a little bit afraid of having the government getting more involved in this. Do you think there's certain people, including Republican congressmen, who want to push more credentialism? Even if that credentialism is through a tech school, they want more credentialism. Do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing? Because credentialism is a little bit different than a skills-based hiring decision, isn't it? Is credentialism good or bad?
I think the understanding of what the credentials offer and the skills that they offer is a good thing.
What we see here is a challenge to the idea that authority automatically equals accuracy. This isn't about paperwork. It's about who gets to participate in the economy and who gets filtered out before they even try. When hiring becomes an exercise in checking institutional badges instead of identifying real capability, it shifts power away from workers and into the hands of gatekeepers. And that has long-term consequences for economic mobility, fairness, and trust in public systems.
The transparency that LERs and talent marketplaces offer is definitely a positive.
Okay, I didn't exactly get the answer to your question. We'll ask one of the others to respond. Credentialism means that, to me, you took a class. Maybe you wouldn't be good at doing this job in the workplace, but you took a class, so you get a credential. And I think skills-based means maybe even the employer himself gives you a test or talks to references or whatever and says this person can do a good job. Do you think credentialism based on academic achievement is a good or bad thing?
I'll take that question, Congressman. I think if you start from the end and work backwards, and the end being like, what does the workforce require? I do believe that the workforce and employers are looking for proxies that signal the competencies in the skills required for the role in the job. A good example of that is simply how industry certifications across technology sector, across healthcare, et cetera, those have emerged to be a great proxy. If the holder of that certificate or that credential, if you will, that already is a great signal of the skill that this individual already has demonstrated competency needed to do that job. Now, that is actually a great market-based model of using credentials to signal value. You're certainly right that if we're not careful, you take any course, you get awarded a badge, you take any class, you get a badge, et cetera. That will propagate the dynamic that you see on Credential Engine today. 1.8 million things registered on there, but reality is that the ones that are actually credible and value in the market are a small.
This is the marketplace speaking honestly. Credentials aren't inherently bad, but they've multiplied without accountability, and their value is uneven. When credentials flood the system faster than transparency or oversight can keep up, the result isn't opportunity, it's confusion. And confusion benefits institutions that profit from credentials far more than workers trying to build a life. The deeper question becomes whether America is building competence or just selling paperwork.
A fraction of that, and it's now created noise in the system that's not good for anybody, including the individuals who are getting the badges.
Okay. Mr. Kaplan, is there a concern here that, as we delve into this, somebody decides what's on that LER, what you have to do to get a good LER or not a good LER? Is that going to be a difficult thing, or is that something that makes it more difficult and we don't want the government sloshing around and making decisions as to what to do here? Or do we trust government to be able to coach people how to put together a good LER?
I think we need to rely on those who are issuing the LERs and issuing the credentials to make that decision. So in terms of the
Who would that person be?
could be an employer, it could be an academic institution, it could be a government agency. I mean, to me, an LER or credential is just, it's a container. And that container represents a set of skills and competencies that are there. And I believe that over time, the marketplace can sort out those that are good and those that are bad.
If we say the marketplace, the marketplace is almost the opposite of an LER. And then an LER is somebody, an academic, government agency or whatever, is saying, you have such and such a competency. And without an LER,
This is a struggle over control. Whoever defines qualification controls access to opportunity. If the government owns it, it centralizes power. If corporations own it, it becomes profit-driven. If academia owns it, it can drift toward elitism. The stakes are democratic. Access to work shouldn't depend on which institution stamps your resume. The conversation exposes how credential systems shape who rises and who never gets the chance.
the individual himself, the guy in the room doing the interviewing, has to make that decision, or together with whatever the references tell him or the prospective employee has to tell him. So I guess my fear is that if the government gets involved, the government begins to set standards that, maybe a person who's perfectly capable of doing the job does not hit those standards. And that's my concern. We better just let to natural evolution, as over time more and more employers become aware that particularly college degrees aren't worth much. And as one employer told me, a master's degree is almost a negative because it takes you too long to deprogram these people.
Here, the concern isn't theoretical, it's structural. When centralized standards harden, they don't just define qualifications, they define worth. And once that happens, opportunity becomes a privilege, not a right. The American promise has always been that talent, work ethic, and performance matter. But when institutional barriers outweigh ability, the system stops rewarding excellence and starts rewarding compliance, and democracy suffers.
When I talked about standards earlier in my testimony, I was really talking about technical standards that can support interoperability, not standards in defining what's a good LER or not a good LER. One thing that I would add is we also envision within this learning and employment record universe self-asserted skills. So we're not just looking at formal credentialization, but we're also giving people the opportunity and encouraging them to bring forward skills and competence that they have and put that into the LER as well. The key to all of this is just transparency about the data that's in the LER. So whoever looks at that, whether it's an employer or an academic institution, they know where that information came from. If it's coming from an employer or an academic institution, you can verify it. If it's coming from an individual, they can state why they think they have those skills and competencies. And so the person reading that LER can make the determination based upon the information that's in it, whether or not they agree with the value that it's bringing.
Thank you for giving me the additional time.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
This is where possibility enters the conversation. Instead of gatekeeping systems deciding who is allowed to be capable, transparent, evidence-based skill documentation gives power back to both workers and hiring institutions. It shifts hiring from assumption to proof, and if implemented ethically, it strengthens trust, widens opportunity, and rebuilds faith in fairness. The question now is whether policy will support openness or reinforce control. This hearing wasn't just about hiring practices. It was about who gets to define success in America. Credential systems shape social mobility, economic access, and whether hard work truly matters more than institutional affiliation. If standards are built to exclude, democracy narrows. If systems are built to empower, democracy strengthens. What happens next will determine whether our nation values proof of ability or proof of paperwork. Accountability, transparency, and fairness must guide reform, because opportunity should belong to people, not to institutions that guard the gate. Subscribe to Liberty Report USA.